Can you give me a sense of, how did you get involved and what it was that you set out to try to build? What's the business plan basically from day one? And has that changed?
Yeah, so I got involved after I had announced that I was going to finish up at Paladin following the restructure of Paladin. There was actually quite a long period. I think there was like a 6-month period that where I'd announced the departure, but it was ongoing, and a few people made approaches to me, including the founding shareholders and a couple of directors of Galena, and it was an interesting experience because the company had just put out a scoping study, and these guys came to me and said, there's a base metals project in Western Australia with these kind of investment returns and very low technical risk. And I sort of said, well, hang on a minute, I'm really focused on the mining industry. If there was something this good, I would have heard about it. And I just didn't, the company was new and I hadn't. So, they asked me, they sort of said, listen, we're pretty sure this is going to go into the next phase in terms of a much higher phase of study level, and go through the permitting phase and the financing phase, and we'd really like to know if you're interested to be involved. And I did some due diligence and everything excited me, and I ended up agreeing to join in the middle of 2019.
Okay, so relatively new. So what was the plan that you bought into? Because I'm always interested in saying, what did the company set out to do? What did they think they had? And how things evolve and change? Because mining's tough, markets are tough. How do you kind of keep the show on the road?
Well, this deposit, by the way, Abra, is not new. I mean, it was discovered in the early 80s, so it's been around for a long time. These guys had a geological contention. So Abra previously had never been brought into a mine because it was considered a very large but low-grade lead deposit. So there's historical resources like 90, 100 million tonnes at 2, 3, 4% lead. And so it just never stacked up in an economic sense. And so the team here had initially focused on a geological contention, which was the old idea was if you tried to increase the cutoff grade, it wasn't proven that there would be a contiguous ore body at a higher grade that had that would have good economics for mining. So that was the contention that these guys had in a geological sense. And they were at the stage where they were proving that contention with drilling. So when I joined, there was a large drilling campaign had just been undertaken, and they were exactly right. So they were effectively infill drilling an area of the deposit, and they were getting very good grades and thicknesses, and they were able to come up with a resource that had a much higher grade mine plan. So at the time, the concept was, when I joined, it was if we can have 10 million tonnes at 10% per annum lead, then we'll have blockbuster economics. And that was proven in the scoping study. So, but I guess at the time I was joining, and I joined shortly after another gentleman by the name of Troy Flannery, who was at the time joined as Chief Operating Officer, very experienced mining engineer, and very experienced as well with studies and analysis of pre-development type projects. And so we had this idea that 10 by 10 is great, but to have a project that's genuinely attractive in the financial, to financiers and to maximise the value, we want to look at a project with a bit longer mine life and whatnot. So we actually ended up almost dialing back the cut-off grade a little bit from the scoping study, and we put out a PFS with a 14-year mine life and an average grade of about 8.5% lead, and it had stellar economics.
Yeah, see, this is the bit that really kind of gets me excited here. Is like if I look at your share performance last while, ended 2018 pretty much where you are today. So you had a really good year last year. Was that off the back of people getting excited about silver again, or why do you think last year was so good?
No, I mean, silver for us, depending on your silver price scenario or whatnot, it's less than 10% of the revenue in the project. So silver is very nice to have as a balance in the project, but it's not, people aren't buying our stock for silver exposure.
So what did people see? What did people see?
So I think the real step change that happened for our business last year was the investment by Toho Zinc of Japan. So up until the Toho investment, we were just another junior. But before Toho invested, the market cap was about $30 million. And, we're talking about projects with $160, $170 million worth of capex spend. And everyone sits there and says, I like the project, but the risk of how you're going to finance it is why I can't buy the stock. So Toho, we ran a process in late 2018 to see we approached everybody. We had 15 different people in a data room. We were talking to people about, PE style investments, all kinds of different things. And Toho emerged from that process as a customer, saying we would like to invest. We ended up doing a deal with them to invest 90 million Australian dollars for a 40% stake in the project. So it valued the project very highly, and it also gave us the equity that we need to build the thing.
Right, and so we're going to bounce around here because there's quite a few moving parts that you've managed to put together.
Yeah.
But let's start with the first thing. So what were you brought in to do? So if they knew what they knew about the project, were you brought in to be able to introduce finance?
That's my, I guess, main sweet spot. But it's not just about, my role's not to just sort of come in and go pick the pieces up and say, great, I had a lot of connections in the industry. I think I know who might be interested to finance this. It's also about making sure that you're involved in the technical preparation and, in fact, the project design phase to be able to create a project that is going to be supported by the financing market. So I think a lot of people don't understand that. And, in fact, it's tempting for people in the industry to say, okay, I'm going to design the project to maximize theoretical NPV. But what they don't understand is your cost of capital is actually variable, right? And it depends on whether the project is going to appeal to debt financiers or be solely equity finance or whatnot. So you have to have this mindset coming into the project design phase. So I think, I guess my skill set as applies to Galena is not just about connecting the company with finance. It's also about creating a project in its design sense and also in the quality of the data. I mean, there's a quality of work you have to get to that that you can have people come through a due diligence process and make, executable offers in the end. And that's another thing where I think a lot of projects miss out because companies are starved of capital, so they cut corners on the work and then they fail to get additional capital.
So this is a really interesting conversation. I come from the finance side. Okay, I would be looking at companies and trying to work out what I did and didn't like. Green flags and red lights. But there's a little bit of what you're saying there that says to me, actually, the money drives the way that you design the project. So, a lot of miners do it, as you said, here's the way we do it. We'll work out what we've got theoretically and now who wants it. And you're saying, well, actually, we've got to follow the money, understand what they want, or the best way that Alex can, present this information to be able to extract that money from the different types of money sources out there. So you've got to have an idea in your head, don't you, before you start what you think you need to build. And do you do that from having had conversations or just experience as to what you think will get over the line?
Well, so the first thing I'd say is, so it's not the driver. Okay. You've got, your technical framework is still driving the bulk of what you're moving forward to. But it's a constituency in terms of that you have to understand when you are making decisions in the sort of in the pre-development and study phase. So I'm not saying it's the key driver, but it's a constituency, and it's a constituency I think that's often ignored. So, that is a point here where now in terms of is it experience, it's a mixture of I have a lot of experience financing projects, so I've had let's say trial and error type experience, and I know what works and what doesn't work with different groups of financiers and whatnot. So that's part of it, but also, as you say, it's also an ongoing process of like the first thing we did after the PFS, as I said, was we ran this active process. Now, we picked an equity partner from that process, but we also had other parties in that could be providers of debt in the next stage and whatnot. And we were getting early feedback from those parties as to what their sweet spots were with respect to this project and what we had to do to move it to the next level for them.